To continue on building our application, in a previous two recordings, one we showed how we can add data validation to protect our data, make sure that we give our users drop downs to choose from, as well as make sure that they put valid dates. And to see how we did that, you can watch the previous videos. Now in this video, we want to make sure that we give our users the option of clearing this registration data quickly. And so I will record a macro that will clear this data quickly and give them a button that they can click on to clear the registration data. And so if you would go to Developer tab, you will see an option for macros. And to record a macro, you would simply click on Record Macro. Now, if you don't see the Developer tab, you need to add it. So to add the Developer tab on your ribbon, you can go to File, Options, and then click on Customize Ribbon. And you want to make sure that Developer is checked on this side. If it's unchecked, it won't show on the ribbon, so you want to make sure that it is checked so that you can see it and you can have the luxury of using macros. So macros are simply instructions that you save to automate your work. So for example, for each person that registers, I would have to select these cells and then hit the delete key to delete these cells. And so, it's two steps. It is a simple process, but I'm going to make it even more simplified by recording a macro that will do that. It will select these cells and then delete them. And so to record your macro, you would click on Record Macro. And now we will give our macro a name. So let's call it Clear Data. You can also assign your macro a shortcut. So let's say every time I want to run the macro, we will use the keyboard shortcut Control D, for example. You know how, for example, Control B will bold text or Control I will italicize text. So in this case, we're creating a new shortcut, Control D, to run the Clear Data macro. We will save the macros in this workbook. And it's always a good idea to add a description of what this macro does for documentation purposes. And just in case you have multiple macros, you forget what they do, then you can simply go back to the description to read about the macros that you have recorded. So in this case, I will add the description, macro to clear the registration data in the range B4 to B10. Okay, so we added information about the macro. Once you click OK, recording starts. So click OK. You see how it says stop recording, which means that any keystroke I make, anything that I do will be recorded in the macro. So you just want to be careful as you record your macro that you don't do typos and things like that. And so in this case, all I need to do is select this range here and then hit delete on my keyboard. And that's it for this macro. As a last step for the macro here, I will select cell A15. And so I finished recording my macro, click stop recording. And now if I want to run this macro, let's say I add, for example, an activity, and I add a person's name, I'm not going to add the rest, but if I add it, you'll see how it will be cleared. So to run the macro, all I need to do is, based on the shortcut that we created, Control D. And you see how quick it was. I don't have to select anything, delete anything, or select myself manually, cell A15. Now, if I want to edit a macro after I record it, then I can go to macros here. And then you see we select clear data and then we click edit. And now we have an application here that just appeared, which is called Microsoft Visual Basic for Applications. In short, we call it VBA. It shows you the macro that you recorded. And so this code is written in VBA. You see how we clicked around in Excel. It created this code for us. And if you look into it, it's really simple to understand. So for example, the macro that we recorded, we gave it a name, clear data. We gave it the description here, and we assign it this shortcut. And you see this green text. That's simply, in programming, we call this comment field. That's how you add your comments. And comments are used for documentation, and Excel will ignore that as it runs the macro. It's just for us to understand what this macro does. And you see the steps start here. We selected the range B4 to B10, and then we cleared that content, we deleted the content, and finally we selected cell A15. So I can edit my macro after I recorded it by going to VBA. And so if I change this, let's say I want to change it from selecting A15 to selecting A20, we can change it here. And so if I click on File, Close to Excel, you'll see how it will select A20 as the last step in the recorded macro. So if I were to run the macro again, select an activity, and one way to run the macro, as we said, Control D, which is the shortcut we created, and you see how now it went to selecting cell A20. And so that's how you can edit the macro. Macros and edit. Now to make things look even cooler, I will add a button that when they click on, it will run the macro automatically. And so right now under the developer tab, you see the insert grayed out. And the reason why it's grayed out, if you remember from the previous recording, we protected this sheet. So if you go to the review tab, you want to make sure that you unprotect the sheet first. So now I can easily add the button and assign it the macro. So if I go to the developer tab, you see insert enabled. And now I can go here to button, which is a form control. And then I will draw my button here. And I will assign it clear data macro. Click OK. And now give my button a meaningful name, which is clear registration data. You don't want to forget to protect the sheet again. So we go to the review tab, protect sheet. So people won't be playing with my application. And let's test this, make sure that this button works. Again, if I add person's name here, and then I click on clear registration data, you see how amazing that is. It clears that registration data quickly by running the macro and then finally selecting cell A20. Other things that you need to do as you protect your application, we did protect the application by protecting the sheet so that they don't tamper with my sheet, but they can right click on my sheet and basically delete the whole sheet, which is not good, of course. So you want to make sure that not only do you want to protect the sheet, you also want to protect the workbook from sheets being deleted and so on and so forth. And so if you click Protect Workbook, that will protect the structure of the workbook. Again, we can make it password encrypted. So we click OK. And now if they right click here, you see how delete is grayed out and they won't be able to delete our sheet.